begin tonight with former MSNBC host, CEO, editor-in-chief of Zato, Mehdi Hasan. It is good to see you, as always. Your feelings about Donald Trump aside, we will get to those. Do you agree with me that just as an observer, politically he is stronger today than he was when he took office?
Okay, so no, I don't agree with that. I do enjoy coming on your show because when I listen to your monologue, there's bits where I nod along in agreement. I'm glad you referred to the North Korean praise. It was an insane cabinet meeting yesterday. And then there's parts where I kind of shake my head when you say, for example, he didn't fire Mike Waltz. I mean, he literally fired Mike Waltz. This morning, Mike Waltz was National Security Advisor. Tonight, he's not National Security Advisor. He was fired as National Security Advisor. Now, did he get another lesser job in the administration? Sure, but he was fired this morning.
Okay.
On the power of Trump, when he came to office, he was actually ridiculously powerful. People like me were like, whoa. Like, people are, rolling over for him, bowing down to him, bending knees. He's got crazy popular approval ratings. He had just won the popular vote, unlike in 2016. And now you have, look at the polling. I mean, you cited some polling, which shows he's more popular than Harris. But he's the most unpopular president at this point in 100 days in modern American history. His stock market has performed worse than any president in the first 100 days since Nixon.
I hear you.
The polling is bad. The polling is really bad.
There's no question.
He's underwater on every issue.
There's no question about that. But inside the Republican Party, there is not a single person you can find who is breaking with him.
Agreed.
It is remarkable, though, how he continues to become more Trumpy. And it seems as though the less he cares about how the world views him, how the media views him, the more powerful he becomes because he's just willing to do anything.
So I guess we're debating the idea of what it means to be powerful. Is he powerful within the Republican Party? Is he more powerful than he was? But perhaps. I mean, I'm no defender of the Republican Party. One of my great critiques of the two-party system in this country is that one party has basically allowed itself to become a personality cult and offer no kind of resistance whatsoever. I think the problem is that he needs to be president of the entire country. I know he doesn't want to be, has no interest in being, but he isn't. And of course, the base doubled down with him. If you look at the polling, every group of people have turned on him except his base. And what's fascinating about Trump is every time he has this opportunity to really do something radical, oh, wow, his numbers are up with Hispanic men. They were, right? There were huge increases. I'm not going to deny that he did much better than any of us imagined with non-white voters. And yet, look at that now. Look at the polling now. He's absolutely hemorrhaging.
Look, I understand the polling.
He's not building, Leland. My point is, he's not building. He's not expanding. He's always contracting.
Okay, well, he built through the campaign. Now you're saying how he's governing is contracting. But if you think about two different polls, most effective start in the first 100 days, Donald Trump beats Obama, Trump, and Biden. DDHQ, Trump's handling of the border, 39% say he's doing better than expected, 37% say he is doing worse than expected. I understand the desire to just hammer away at, especially for those who don't like Donald Trump, at his approval numbers. They are down. I'm wondering if the underlying part of these poll numbers, we aren't missing something.
I'm not sure because, again, we can spend the whole time talking about poll numbers. The New York Times Siena College poll shows him underwater on every issue. He used to lead on the immigration and the economy. He's losing on both of those key issues for him, right? People like me used to get frustrated that he's winning on the economy even though he has no economic policy. He's winning on immigration even though he does horrible things. Now, the most unpopular single issue for him is his handling of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, which, was supposed to be...
Yeah, I'm not sure how that question was asked, but go ahead. I think you make a point.
TV, he goes on TV and he makes a fool of himself this week, repeatedly saying to Terry Moran that the words MS-13 were written on the knuckles of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. An insane... I'm not even saying
we go back and forth, but Mehdi, when it comes... I get that, but I think there's a large portion of the country that just doesn't care
about
what you're saying about it, whether or not the knuckles were written MS-13 or whether it was tattoos. It's okay.
Well, that's a separate argument. I care about issues because they're true or false. I don't need a poll to tell me what's important. When the president lies, that matters to me. When he says delusional things, that matters to me. I don't need to look at polls. When Joe Biden made a fool of himself in that debate last summer, I came down to this studio, this is my home studio, and I made a video that night saying he needs to step out of the race. I didn't check the Democratic Party polls to see whether that's a popular position or not. I just thought that's wrong. Let me just finish my point. Let me just 1 second. I just want to finish one point on the economy and immigration. This is bad for him. There is two key issues he's behind on 100 days into his presidency. On the economy, he's telling people buy $2 instead of $30.
And we got that in a segment coming up. We got that in a segment coming up. This is him tonight at the University of Alabama. Take a listen.
You're the first graduating class of the golden age of America. We're in the golden age. We've done things that nobody thought possible. 100 days yesterday, 100 days, and we've done things that nobody thought even possible.
I don't think Democrats thought it was possible to do what he did on immigration and what he did on DEI culture at all was possible in 100 days. But I would put to you that the same groups that that underestimated him during the election and said there's no way this guy can win because he's been convicted of this and he was charged with that and on, they're the same ones who are underestimating him again now. And I just see this other side of all of a sudden you have a deal with China, you have a deal with the EU, maybe he gets a Ukraine-Russia deal. All of those look possible. And suddenly this all turns around, doesn't it?
So I underestimated him in 2016. I have not underestimated him since 2017 onwards. I'm the guy who said he's not going to leave office peacefully. He's going to do an insurrection. And people say, don't be silly. He'll be dragged out. I've always said, take Trump seriously. Don't pretend that he's just trolling. When he says, I want to run for a third term, unlike you, I take that seriously. So I don't dismiss at all his power to change this country. My big worry is that in 6 months, 1 year, American democracy will be gone. It won't look like it looks right now. He's already defying the Supreme Court. He's defying lower courts. What he's doing is so dangerous on a constitutional, legal, democratic level that no, I'm not underestimating him at all.
Help me understand here. The youngest people in America, who normally are the most liberal, right? 18 to 24-year-olds now have moved conservative. You watch them at the University of Alabama. Trump's having a good time, and I think the crowd's having a better time. How do you explain that?
Oh, come on. We're not going to measure public opinion by a Trump crowd. Actually, if you look at the polling, his poll numbers with young people, again, have crashed, like with Hispanics. All these places he had leads, he's losing them. And on the economy, we haven't seen the full impact of the tariffs.
That's
true.
You
talk about a golden age of America. On the 101st day of Trump's presidency, we had the first negative quarter of growth since the start of 2022. A majority of Americans, including a majority of Republicans, believe we're going to have a recession this year as a result of Trump's policies. So I'm happy to keep coming on your show, Leland, and talking about how this year goes. I can believe two things at the same time. One is he will continue to get more unpopular. Two is he will continue to do great damage to this country. I'm not underestimating his power or influence or ambition.
I want to get you on one last thing, because we haven't talked about foreign policy yet. No group or country has killed more Arabs or Muslims than the Iranians, than the mullahs. Pete Hegseth tweeted out Wednesday night, message to Iran: we see your lethal support to the Houthis, another group with a desire to kill many, many people. We know exactly what you are doing. You know very well what the U.S. military is capable of, and you were warned. You will pay the consequences at the time and place of our choosing. Is Trump finally taking on Iran a good thing for those who want an end to the constant bloodshed in the Middle East?
No, I don't think we need another war in the Middle East. And it's interesting that this is something he campaigned against, right? He ran as the anti-war guy. He went to Michigan and said, Liz Cheney is going to get Americans killed in the Middle East. I'm going to stay out of wars in the Middle East. Now he's threatening to bomb Iran like never before.
So Iran being strong is good?
He's hawkish. It's not about Iran being strong or weak. It's about having a region where people are not at each other's throats, where we're not having another Iraq-style war. You talked about Iran killing a lot of Muslims. I mean, the United States under George Bush killed, what, 500,000, 1 million Iraqis? We'll never know. So the funny thing is people like Tucker Carlson...
Way more died in Syria. But go ahead.
Leland, what a great idea. We killed 500,000, Assad killed 1 million. The point is we killed a lot of people. I don't agree with Tucker Carlson on anything, as you know. But on Iran, Tucker Carlson wing of the GOP is right. We need to stay out of these foreign wars. Many of Trump's most loyal MAGA voters do not want another war in the Middle East.
You make a great point about Tucker Carlson.
And Waltz.
Let me give you one last point, and you can end. You think about the horseshoe now of American politics, right? It comes like this. You and Tucker Carlson probably being on the bottom of the horseshoes.
No.
Do you not worry? You don't agree with that?
No, the one issue I agree with Tucker Carlson on is no war with Iran, but I'm pretty much sure I disagree with 95% of what Tucker Carlson believes.
All right, fair enough. Mehdi, it's always fun to have you on. I always enjoy having people who are smarter than me. It's good to see you.
That's not true, but I appreciate it.
It is true. It's why we have you on.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.